Hey guys, it's Amelia, but not the pilot, just Amelia. It is time to talk about this series. So, I have just went on a month-long exploration, maybe 2 months I guess, of reading the entire Sarah J. Maas Throne of Glass series, and boy, was it a mistake. Hot takes, but I didn't really like it. And today, we're gonna get into that. First, I have some vlog content for you of my thoughts as I'm reading the books. So let's get into this. I think this video is probably going to end up being 2 parts. I'm probably just going to split it in the middle. So the first 3 or 4 books, then the second video will be the last handful of books. Let's get into it. Here's the vlog. My goal for this month of February is to read all of the Throne of Glass, Assassin's Blade series in 1 month. Let's do it. Before we start, I just want to state that this is 100% going to be filled with spoilers. So if you haven't read the series before, maybe don't listen to this vlog. I'm just going to be updating you weekly on how I'm faring with my crazy schedule that I set for myself. We'll see if I successfully do it in a month. Who knows? And just my general thoughts on the series. So to start off, this is what I know about Throne of Glass. So I have previously read Throne of Glass and the second and third one, and then half of the 4th book, which I then got bored and stopped reading. I also remember the 3rd one was really dry for me to get through, so we'll see how this goes. Besides that, I don't remember anything. All I remember is that the main character is an assassin, and that's pretty much it. And I have just recently obtained all 7, I think there's 7 books, from the library. So I'm hoping to successfully do this in 1 month. We shall see. I also previously didn't know there is a book called Assassin's Blade, which is like the 0.5 half books that are all combined into one. And it's technically a prequel, so it should be read first, but then it apparently came out 4th, but people are saying I should read it after the 4th one, or after the 3rd book, because then it will have the most impact, because then it will relate to the 4th book, or something like that. I don't know, I have it written down, so I will be reading it in that order. I think it's after the 3rd book. So today is February 6th, and I started reading yesterday on February 5th, and I've gotten about 200 pages into the book. Some things are like coming back to me now, so we're just gonna go over them real fast. This is where the spoilers are gonna start, guys, so if you don't want to be spoiled, stop listening now. Aelin, or her name is Selena, but I remember her name being Aelin for some reason. I think that's her actual name, and we find that out later. Maybe by the end of this book, maybe in another one. Her real name is Aelin something. Her assassin name is Selena Sardothian, but in the court she's going by Lillian, Lady Lillian or something. So a woman of many names. And she starts off in Endovir, which is the prison camp, slave camp, and then she's given this opportunity to leave the camp if she becomes the king's assassin or the king's champion, and the prince is going to have her as his champion. She agrees, and they head off on horseback, and they go into the woods, and there's this weird little interaction about fairies, so then you know, okay, there's gonna be fairies, that's sort of important in this book. The first time I read this, I remember just they being like, oh, okay, fairies, whatever, and then later on in the book series, you're like, oh, fairies. Because if I remember correctly, she's a fairy, and her powers are suppressed or something, and then she slowly gets magic back, and then she makes out with a guy in the woods. I don't remember. I think that's in the 3rd book. So they're going through the woods, and then they end up back in the capital, and she's all like, oh, my people are oppressed, and the king is taking over the whole world. This sucks, but I'm an assassin. But then she's also very feminine girly, I guess you'd say, which is cool, interesting, I guess, to have such a, like, strong, physically strong, can take care of herself character, but wants someone to take care of her anyway. I think that's cute, but I also do think that it's a bit overdone, because in the aspects as in, like, she's like, I'm absolutely stunning, I'm gorgeous, and all the men look at me, but also I could kick butt. Like, it's a very overdone trope. And I think that's why I wasn't really liking these books when I first read them, because I would put it in with all those young adult books from like the 2010 era. As a matter of fact, did this come out around Hunger Games? Yeah, so this came out in 2012. I hate these covers also. Disgusting. I don't like the cover. But I feel like the character is very overdone in a lot of young adult novels from that time. It was very like strong-headed, stubborn girl. All the guys love her. Like, it's just so overdone. And she's the chosen one for some reason, and she has to save the world. I think I'm gonna get really bored with this really quickly, but I'm sort of just trying to vibe with it, trying to just stay for the ride. So that's where we're at right now. They make it to the castle, and they're starting the tasks. She's getting feelings for the prince. Prince is getting feelings for her. Also, the captain of the guard, Kale? Is that how you say his name? I need to know. I'm so confused, because the first time I read it, I always just pronounced it as Chol or Chow in my head. But then I looked it up online and it says it's pronounced like Kale. Kale. Like, let me know, how do you pronounce this? How would you pronounce this? Because neither of those make sense. Anyway, Kale, as in the green spinach. He is also catching feelings for her, and she's also catching feelings for him. If I remember correctly, they all have a little love triangle thing going on, but I remember thinking that the prince and her were better together. I don't know if that's just me projecting because I like princes better, but anyway. The captain of the guard is very strict with her, but then he's like slowly befriending her. They're both talking about books. That's the other very generic stereotype thing about her, is that she's a reader and she loves to read, even though like she's so quirky. She reads. Like, I absolutely hate it. And then she slowly befriends the princess of Eliwa. Don't know how to say that one either. I don't know how to pronounce any of these words from the book, and I just realized now that I've never said any of them aloud, so this is gonna be an interesting video. But it just turns out that Selena also happens to know Elwayan, because that's the language spoken by most of the enslaved people at Endivere. So she quickly befriends this princess. The princess is also supposedly a rebel. So they're bonding over being kick-butt girls and doing rebel stuff, which is cute. I like it, but I also think it's like such a funny trope of like, of course she knows the language, but no one else does. Like, I thought that was really funny. And then they're slowly befriending each other, and the princess also like happens to be like a mentor type of person, because the princess knows a bunch of stuff about the weird marks. And this is where the plot actually starts happening. So we're only 200 pages in, and I know this is where the plot of the book is actually going to start. Selena, on Samhain, which is Halloween, goes to this, she finds this like hidden door behind a tapestry in her room, and she's like, oh my god, no way. And then it happens to lead out of the castle, and she's like, yo dog, this is sick. But then she decides to stay. So this is when we're supposed to realize, okay, yes, like Selena is a good person, and she's gonna stick this through, and she's staying because she's like a chivalrous person. And so she stays, and then she gets this crazy nightmare where she gets a message from one of the previous queens telling her that she's gotta save the day, and that only she could do this, of course. And this is where the whole story like actually starts picking up. I don't know why we need 200 pages to get there, but I feel like there's just way too many plots going on. This is my review so far. I don't remember what I gave these books last time, but I want to say it was 3 stars across the board. That's because I'm hoping to finish this either today or tomorrow or Wednesday. And then I have Crown of Midnight to read next, which is the second one, which I hope to finish by Friday. Because I'm crazy. Like, what? I'm trying to read 400 pages in like 2 days. Girl, I have a full-time working job. I don't know what I'm doing. Other things that I remember happening in the books the first time I read it, I'm pretty positive I remember how this ends. She, like, defeats all the gargoyles and realizes that the prince's birth was shrouded with magic or something, and then the prince gets all self-conscious. I remember her going into the library in the basement, and she fights a bunch of stuff, And then she has to, at the end, there's a big battle when it's the four champions have to fight, and they realize that Cain is one of the demon things. It's harnessing the demon energy, and she has to destroy the demon energy is what happens. But then I think it gets released into the world anyway, or something like that. But it has something to do with the weird marks. And then in the second one and the third one, I remember her doing more assassin stuff. So I feel like the second one, she's off doing assassin stuff for the king. And she gets to wear fancy dresses and does assassin stuff. And then also does assassin stuff in the sewers and starts a revolt. And then I think in the third book, she goes on a boat and leaves everybody behind. So all the men are like, oh no, not my Selena Aylin lady, she can't leave. And she leaves on a boat and goes to this far-off land where they battle a bunch, and now she has a fancy ferryman, who they then make out with. And she realizes she has powers. And maybe that's the fourth one? I really don't remember. Oh, and then there's also a part where, like, she finds out that her Sam guy betrayed her or something? Or, like, one of the assassin people betrayed her, and she's really upset because they were really close. And I think she meets them in the second one. I think they meet up again, and they're like, yo, no way! But then he turns out to be bad still. Yeah, and then her teacher, Arobin, also comes back, and it's like, haha! You're mine! And she's like, no! That's all I remember. So, I don't really have any predictions for this book because I mostly remember it, and we'll see if I'm right for the second and third. I just remember that the battles were getting bigger and bigger and more ridiculous, because in my head it started as like, oh, she's in this enslaved camp, and then she's the best assassin, and then suddenly she's the one leading the entire battalion to war. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't subscribe to the chosen one concept anymore. It has to end. There's too many of them. There's Percy Jackson, we got Harry Potter, those are classics. All these other new chosen one concepts, they just aren't as good. They're just not as good. So we'll see how this goes. So I'll check in with you guys tomorrow. Hello, boys. I absolutely have no idea what day it is. I think it's the 9th, but I finished Throne of Glass last night. I was up really late reading, so I didn't want to film a video because I just wanted to go to bed, and now I've started Crown of Midnight. My review for Throne of Glass, 4 stars, maybe lower. Rereading it obviously was not as fun as the first time. I did check, and last time I also rated it 4 stars, and I left no, review of words, so I don't know what I was thinking then. But I enjoyed it. I think it's a fun little fantasy story. I don't really love the characters all that much. I don't think they're very interesting. I think they're very, generic. And they have no growth. There's no growth. She starts off as a strong, independent woman who's gonna fight till her dying day, and she ends that way too. She's in a better position, physically, but I would argue that mentally she was pretty much the same as she was throughout the whole book. So, also, the ending chapters were very weirdly written. It was an unreliable narrator. She's drugged while she's trying to fight. It had weird parts where within the same paragraph it was a little confusing on which parts were real and everyone was seeing and which parts only she was seeing, which is interesting as a reader. But also, it didn't feel, purposeful, the author meant to do that, so, I don't know. We love that she broke up with Dorian. That was exciting. That's a little twist that doesn't always happen in these young adult books. She's a strong, independent woman. She doesn't need a man. And we love that. So I've just started Crown of Midnight, and I'm trying to remember how I think the plot will go. So Throne of Glass, I was right. I pretty much remembered everything that happened, but I was getting them confused with the order that things happen in. So in Crown of Midnight, I'm pretty positive she finds out that the king is behind all of the magic stuff. He knows the dark magic stuff is happening, and it's somehow connected to the tower, and I think I remember her destroying the tower. There's also some sort of plot where she goes into the basement of the library or something, and she finds out that Dorian is somehow born of the dark magic or something like that, and then Dorian has a whole, like, existential crisis. I also think I vaguely remember she starts dating Kale, or Chol, whatever you want to call him, and I think Chol is sort of funnier because it sounds like Cole, but with a fantasy twist. And then I'm pretty positive Kale turns on her as well, and that's why I don't like him. I'm pretty positive, because he sticks by the rules, and there's a point where he has to choose between the king and Selena, and he chooses the king, I think. And if I remember correctly, at the end of the book, she needs to escape via sea for starting a revolution, is what I think happens. Other things I remember, she's being assigned these assassinations, but she's faking them and helping smuggle them out of the country. And then she is assigned to her friend or something to kill her friend from before. And so she goes and meets the friend, and they catch up, and then she becomes part of the rebel movement. And there's a big battle in a warehouse, of course. And they're in the sewers a lot, and then she escapes. That's what I remember from this book. We'll see what happens. So far, I wanted to point out that I think Kale's going to be problematic. I'm pretty positive I remember that correctly. He just, like, isn't a great guy. There's some sort of red flag there. I just can't put my finger on what it is. I'm really curious about the later books, since I haven't read them, the, like, 4th, 5th, 6th ones, and the Assassin's book. So I'm actually really excited to get to those, but I am scared that I'm gonna get really bored and then it's gonna be hard for me to get through them, because I'm already getting a bit bored with this writing style. I'm not into it. It's not super exciting. The plot is interesting, but nothing about it is, like, surprising. I don't care about the characters that much. I know what's gonna happen, so it's also not exciting to read from that perspective, but that's where I'm at right now. I'm excited to read the other ones. I'm also curious, does she have more men in her life? Because so far, first book we have Dorian, second book we have Kale, and I think the third book is, like, Elfman, I think, if I remember correctly. So who's in the fourth book? I need to know. Does she have a different man in every book? We love that. Alright, that's all I have for today. I'll check in next time. Bye! Okay, so hello, it's February 12th. I am almost done with Crown of Midnight. First off, problems that I currently have with this book. I distinctly remember in the first book that Selena mentions that she goes to the library and they have no librarians, because I thought, that's weird. And now this book, they're in the library all the time, and there's librarians everywhere. So that's definitely an inconsistency. There's also a couple other inconsistencies. I don't really remember them right now, but they were bothering me. Other thing, there was 1-page chapter, which was weird, of Nehemia talking to Princess Elena, or Queen Elena, and deciding to go do something because either Selena or Dorian have to, like, awaken their powers or whatever, and then she, like, dies. I don't understand why that chapter was there. It was 1 page, and I don't think it's coming up again, and she clearly didn't get to do what she wanted to. It was like, why'd they leave this in here still? They should have just deleted it. Other problem I have, I know her name is Aelin. I know she's the princess, but they still haven't gotten to that part, and they teased it, like, once. And I remember the first time I read this, it was weird, because the name is only mentioned once. I think it's mentioned in the first book. I honestly swear that in the first chapter, I have to go look, but I think in the first chapter she mentioned something like, my name is Selena Sardathian. Well, it wasn't always. It used to be Aelin Glanthus, but that's not, like, it doesn't matter right now. And I just remembered it because it's a cool name. And then it comes up again in this one when they're like, oh, they want Aelin Glanthus on the throne. They have found her and they want her on the throne. And she's like, oh no, it must be an imposter though. And I'm like, it's clearly you. Just say it. And so I'm still waiting for them to say it. I don't remember when they say it. But then I totally forgot that there's this whole plot with the boy cousin, because he's, like, her biggest fan or whatever, and he wants her on the throne. I totally forgot. And I'm not looking forward to that part, because this book needs to end. I'm already on the 300-page She just started talking to Baba Yellowlegs or whatever, the witch. So I'm gonna finish this tonight, and then I'm gonna start the next one, which is Heir of Fire. I'm very excited to get to the new books that I haven't read yet, because these are like, as I'm reading them, I'm slowly remembering everything, so nothing's a surprise. But also the writing is just not that good, and I'm so annoyed about this library thing. Alright, well, I'll check in with you tomorrow. Bye. Good morning, it is the 13th, and I have finished this. 4 stars, again. I would say it's just not overly amazing, but they're pretty fun little fantasy, young adult fantasy stuff. The writing is like not that good. I'm finding a lot of inconsistencies. The main one that's bothering me so much is I swear in the first one that they mentioned that there's no librarians, and then in this book there was librarians everywhere. Another couple things that bothered me, the talking doorknob thing, or door knocker, was annoying and like very like cheesy, and it didn't really do anything. It didn't really help her ever. It just confirmed what she already knew, so I didn't really like that. I yet again don't really feel like there's that much character growth within these stories. It's sort of like the characters are what they are and they stick to their path. You could say Aelin had a little bit of character growth. Oh, I'm gonna call her Aelin now because that's her real name. Because at the end she was like, oh, I'm not gonna kill you. But then she did it anyway, so like she didn't grow. I'm not a big fan of Nehemia's character arc because she was one of the coolest characters, and they just sort of, she's like, I knew I had to die so that we could start this war. No, we don't like it. I'm really bummed about the like trio's friendship falling apart. That was like a little upsetting. I feel like they're such a cute little group, but now they're all growing up, which is just like life. But I was sad. I was like, oh, trio's falling apart. Kale's becoming more and more the king's man, and Dorian's becoming this magic boy, and Aelin is becoming Aelin. Obviously read these already, but I remember the Aelin reveal, and I remember guessing it pretty much immediately. Just because the way the hints are placed, I feel like is really obvious. And I swear in the first book, she mentions her name as Aelin. Alright, I can't find it, but I swear in the first book she mentioned something like, it's so obvious, so I thought that reveal was not exciting. Another thing I disliked, the weird scene with the portal, when she opens the portal, it somehow feels like it doesn't belong in the rest of the book. I realize it's supposed to be like magic is finally here and the contrast between the normal world and this magical world, but I feel like the contrast was too big and it almost like didn't feel like it even belonged in the same story. Like the aesthetic. I think it was the fact that nothing was described enough. Like I just imagined like a swirly green nothingness and a weird looking spindly animal, and it just sort of made it really cartoony for me. I felt like it could have been cooler, but I was essentially picturing like she walked out of the real world into a cartoon television screen where she's glowing blue and the world is green. I don't know. Clearly, I've mixed up the plots of all the books. I thought the first one ended with the tower falling during her champion's duel. It didn't. And then I thought the second one was gonna end with the tower falling, and it didn't. So I'm a little confused. Does the tower even fall? Maybe I'm just making that up. But everything's happening in an order that I didn't remember happening. I just started the third book, Heir of Fire, and I vividly remember the beginning of this book. She's like laying on the top of the roofs, drunk, and then the warrior man, fae guy comes. And so this book is the one where she like goes and meets the queen fae, and then the queen fae sends her on a mission or something with the broody man, and the broody man doesn't like her at first, and she's just like annoying to him, and then by the end of it they're like making out and doing weird fae stuff while they make out, I think, if I remember correctly. I remember she like goes to the forest and I think she's like battling and stuff. I don't really know what she's battling. I don't remember. And I remember she has like an inner conflict about her being a fae or being alien and having magic. And so there's this constant battle back and forth where the fae dude Rowan is like, you gotta accept yourself and like become a fae, like just let it out. And she's like, I can't, magic is locked. And he's like, it's not, just let it out. And then I remember that there's like, she gets hurt or something, and then she's in one of those like illnesses for days where she's like internally struggling. I remember her getting a tattoo from him, and it was vaguely sexual. And I remember she like slowly comes into her fae powers, and it's like great that she trained as a human all these years because she's a strong human, but as a fae everything's gonna be so much easier, so she's gonna be like super strong fae, but she's not yet. Yeah, she accepts the name as Aelin by the end of the book, I think. But can we talk about the fact that all the fae are supposed to have a fae form and then an animal form, and her animal form is a human? That's no, I cannot. Like, how convenient. How convenient that is for her. It's super easy to hide in plain sight, but also like out of all the animals that you could be, you get stuck as the worst version of your form essentially, because a human form give what? More or less, that's what I was trying to say. A human form, more or less, is essentially like a fae, but with less powers. Like just a weaker fae who doesn't have pointy ears or teeth or magic, right? So she doesn't get to be a wolf or a bird or like a bear or something cool like that. She has to be a human. That's ridiculous. I cannot with this. So I've only read like chapter 1, 2, 3 of Heir of Fire. So there's a cousin that just visited Rifthold, and apparently he looks exactly like Aelin, but as a boy, essentially. And I think it's just funny that, like, no one else has noticed. Like, they definitely have noticed. You would notice if, like, they look exactly the same. They both have these distinctive eyes and the same color hair. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna go read. Bye. So this video is getting too long, so we just had to cut it in the middle, and I will be doing a second part. I will post the second part of this series talking about the rest of these books as well as my conclusion thoughts on the whole series. However, I do want to say that I did like the first like couple books. I thought they were pretty good. However, they were sort of boring for me to read again. I don't really feel like this series has good reread value, in my opinion. I just didn't enjoy them as much because I already knew what was going to happen, and it happened. So please stay tuned for part 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!